Namaste. My name is Preeti Uppala, and I am a global thought leader and a multimedia personality. Welcome to my podcast, The Preeti Experience. Join me as I explore some of the most fascinating and crucial issues that affect our world today. I take a unique global perspective on these issues, and the very foundation of my insights is humanity and spirituality. I'm Preeti Uppala, and welcome to the Preeti Experience.
You're watching NewsX. I'm Rishabh Gulati, and we are days away from the US presidential election. Millions, and I mean it literally in the millions, of postal ballots and early voting has already happened. So how's it looking? Let us touch base from right across the United States of America. Joining us on the broadcast, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor. He's joining us out of Washington. Ambassador Deepak Vora has been out of New York. You've been watching his discussions with us for the past several weeks. Preeti Uppala, editor of The Observer, is joining us out of California. Sri Iyer, founder of P Guru, is also there in California. And Kriti Upadhyay, research associate, US-India studied at CSIS, is also joining us out of Washington. Welcome to all of you and to the various time zones that you are currently in. If I can begin with Ambassador Vora. Ambassador Vora, you've been out and about. You were telling us in New York, what's the pulse on the ground? So what are people there telling you? What's happening?
Thank you very much. Mr. Gulati, always a pleasure to interact with you and learn from the wonderful people. I see that we are 3 on the East Coast and 2 on the West, indicates the relative weight of these regions in the voting. Hoopla is an Americanism, and it means the exciting surrounding an event or situation, especially when it is considered to be an unnecessary fuss. It's also a British game, by the way, in which rings are thrown from a fixed line to encircle one of several prizes. Now, what we are seeing today, sir, very, very clear. Both of these hoopla in the British and American sense are accurate descriptions of the present presidential election. The lines, blue or red, have been crossed several times by both contenders. Let me put it to you like this, sir. Donald Trump does not like to lose. Joe Biden doesn't know how to win. All issues have been relegated to the background except China and its virus. Personal attacks are getting nastier and nastier. And today, with news that the virus is hitting back, China virus too, I believe firmly, sir, the conversations that I'm having in New York, it's now 10:30 in the morning. I'd gone for a walk despite the heavy rain and cold. By the way, it's 5 degrees here. The wind chill factor makes it 1 degree. Despite all this, I went for a walk to catch up with my group. And even those who thought that Trump is a bit of a guy from Mars, they're saying, well, he seems to be our best bet. So my bet today, sir, would be on Donald Trump. Okay. Even though New York is blue, it's a sanctuary state. It has vacillated in the past, oscillated in the past between Republican and Democrat. But this time, I think it's going to be Trump.
Okay, let's hop across to the other side of the Americas, where it's even earlier in the morning. Sri Iyer, what's the pulse on the ground, sir? What's happening? What's the buzz?
Like Voraji said, California also is a solid democratic state. Rishabh, this election is going to be won or lost in 12 battleground states. The main ones being Florida, South Carolina, Texas, Arizona, and Wisconsin, Michigan. I can go on.
Yeah.
Georgia. And so on. So these are the states where everybody is concentrating. But if you look at the amount of spending that is going on, ad spending, Democrats are spending much more than the Republicans are. It appears as though Trump hasn't got some of his Wall Street backers this time backing him. So he's being very careful with where he's dispersing the money. And I believe that now Trump is beginning to lead in 2 critical states, Florida and North Carolina. Very, very small margins of lead. But if that holds, and if he can flip a couple of more states, it's going to be up in the air. We may not get a result on the November 3rd because there may be some more counting. There'll be some challenges in different courts and so on and so forth.
Okay, you're already predicting a court battle. Okay, well, hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm sure America and the rest of the world also wants to move on. We don't want more battles in what has already been a turbulent year. But if I can hop across back to Washington, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, what's the buzz on the ground, sir? What's making waves right now? And I'm going to come and talk about India specifically, but what's happening there right now?
Well, according to whatever intelligence is going around in these circles here, in terms of the pandemic getting worse, the surge in the virus, in terms of the economics data coming in very late in the day, the positive economic data, in terms of the fundraising successes by Democrats being much more than the Republicans, in terms of Trump's cancellation of the hotel party, election night party at his own hotel. So the general feeling now coming around is that Biden's lead, though it is narrow, may put him across the finish line. So we should also be discussing how we should be, tackling that. Having said that, what I also want to say is that elections these days are hardly a domestic or a national phenomena, in the sense that Biden has also written an op-ed in a Korean daily. So it becomes a sort of an international event, international activity, international participation, international influencing. Fundraising wise, Indians have been very active. Some of my friends from the IITs, Indian IITs here in the US, have been raising huge amount of funds. More of them have been raising funds for the Democrats than for the Republicans. What my discussion with them and message to them has been, whether they have been asking the Biden and Kamala Harris team and on the other side the Trump team as to whether they can increase the representation of the Indian Americans in their campaign staff, in their transition teams. The Indian narrative is also reinforced in both the sides.
Okay.
Because the Biden lacks it more than the Trump side currently.
A couple of the Biden advisors might muck up the momentum that's been built on China, while there are others who are pretty strong on China as well. Okay, Preeti, what's the buzz telling you? We've had two voices saying that Trump is going to pull off a surprise again. Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor is being saying that maybe the Democrats have the edge, Biden has the edge. What's the buzz where you are?
Well, namaste, Mr. Gulati. Thank you for having me on your show. Always wonderful to be here. Look, there is something very mystical and out of worldly, I think, about this election. Similar to 2016, I think there's a magic. There was a magic then, there's a magic now, and I feel that President Trump is almost trying to recreate that magical, etheric environment, ambience, if you will. And I think he's succeeding in many ways. I was listening to one of his rallies yesterday, and I just thought, boy, after COVID, he's really sprung back, and he's pumped up. The crowd is pumped up, and this is happening in every state he goes. Right here in Beverly Hills, there was a huge turnout. I feel that there's not just a question of possible contestation, because I see two scenarios. One, Trump is going to win in a landslide. Two, he won't win, but he will contest it. And guess what? When there is a contestation, at the very end, this is going to end up in the Supreme Court, right? And so with the newly appointed Associate Justice, I think things really look good in his favor. But I don't just suspect a contestation of the presidential race. I also suspect Senate races to be contested. They're extremely hot as well. And as everybody else has mentioned, the key battleground states are going to be so pivotal. Trump leads in Ohio, which they always say, if you win Ohio, you have a great chance. Look, if he concentrates on half of those and he gets over the line, I think because of the way that it's the winner-take-all approach to the Electoral College, he will find himself not having to move out of the White House. So let's see if the planets are going to be in his favor.
Okay, I think we in India also love to take electoral battles to the Supreme Court. I think we've done it in pretty much every recent state election. I can think of some very good senior Supreme Court lawyers who can hop across. One of them, of course, recently married in London. Kriti, let me quickly open up this conversation to you. What's the gut? Is the Biden camp, in terms of the advisors that have come on board in the past few weeks, are they getting on board the same kind of momentum on China? Because while the electoral battle is going on in America, here we've had Pompeo, who's literally just come and gone. and a lot of momentum has been building. What's your take there? What's happening within the Biden camp?
Hi, Rishabh. Firstly, thank you for having me over. I think that's a very important question. One thing that is on everybody's mind: how is the new administration, in case Biden comes on, going to be towards China? I do think there isn't much to worry, be it Republicans or Democrats. Their stand is going to be against countering China and its aggression within the region. Of course, Biden is not going to be as heavy-handed as Trump, so it might not be as confrontational. Rather, it will be conciliatory. So they're probably trying to, have more dialogues with China, try to see where concessions are due. But I think both Democrats and Republicans will have a hard stance against China. Now, another thing that we need to keep in mind, that if a Biden administration does come to power, one thing that they're going to do is that their priorities will not be as the same as the Trump administration's. So the Trump administration has somewhat moved away from its more traditional allies, be it NATO, be it South Korea, be it the EU. So for the Biden administration, one of the key priorities would be mending those ties rather than, thinking about their relationship with India
but
or the Indo-Pacific.
Here's the problem, right? Which is what they all end up doing. Clinton did the same thing. Obama did it in his first term. They all seem to think that Europe is the future. When anybody with common sense can tell you Europe is not the future. It obviously is in the Indo-Pacific. So here's the concern that we have. So let me take on the second concern. Is it looking like we in India have endorsed Trump? Is that the word seems to be in Washington, that you guys want Trump? Kriti?
Yes and no, Rishabh, because if you look back when Obama administration was in power, we had also invested a lot with Obama, and we were hoping, if Hillary Clinton comes in, that continuity would be there. So I think it's more about continuity than anything else. Even right now, we're invested with Trump. We've had great personal ties with Trump, but everything hasn't been hunky-dory. If you look at our trade relationship, the Trump administration did take off GSP. They have been very zero-sum game in terms of trade. So there can be concessions on certain areas. They can be hardball on other areas. But I think for India, the way that we are thinking right now, Indians are thinking, it's more in terms of investment. And I think that could be a short-term thing, but after 6 months to 1 year, I don't think it would matter much.
Interesting.
So,
but the bottom line is, if the Chinese are counting on Joe Biden coming into power in America, right? They want the dialogues. They want to waste time. Like they've had 21 rounds of dialogues with us on the border. I don't know how many rounds at the corps commander level to solve. They want to keep you talking while they get up to no good. And that's what the reality check is. There's no running away from it. But Sriya here, the other reality check is that Indian Americans don't really give much two hoots about India. Very few are still rallying for the Republican cause despite Texas, despite Trump in Gujarat, despite all of it. What logic is not being able to be understood? Is it very microcausal that this is only about themselves and their green cards?
Well, the Indian Americans are thinking that Rajiv Malhotra and Sri Iyer are making a good fight of it, so they don't need to do anything about it. So jokes apart, Indian Americans are very focused on their careers, and once they get established a little bit, then the children come along, they want to plan their children's future, and a lot of things are happening. Rishabh, there's one interesting battle taking place in California. If you will permit me, this is a very important thing. See, what is happening is, in the United States, they have something similar to reservations for college students seeking admissions.
Correct.
Now, California was one of those states that did not have it. It was merit-based. So what used to happen was the Asian American population, Chinese, Indian, Korean, everything lumped, Japanese, everything lumped together. We comprised 33% of the population, but we were getting 40% of the seats in the UC system. Now, Mr. Ro Khanna wants to change that. The Democrats want to change that. They want to bring in reservation, something similar to that, in the UC system. Yeah. That's going to work to the detriment of a lot of Asian Americans. At least for that particular reason, I hope the Indian Americans wake up, smell the /coffee, /tea, /orange juice, /coconut juice, whatever it is that they drink in the morning, and realize that they have.
But here's the bottom line, and the same applies, because I think pretty much all of us on the panel, all of us have family living in America. Many of them will be voting this time around, and the reality is, They're not voting Trump. They don't seem to care much about China. They are worried about what Trump talks about on immigration and what he talks about visas, and that's the only thing that matters. So what's the point? What is the point of this diaspora, Ambassador Deepak Vora? How does it help us?
I wish I could answer your question.
I don't know how much of my family is watching this broadcast, but I'm calling it nonetheless. Why don't they care about India, sir?
Oh, that's, whatever you've said, Mr. Gulati, I shall not challenge that. Oh, they do care about India. Please, they all have families in India. They all remit money whenever it's required. When an immigrant community comes to any other country, at least 2 generations retain very strong links with the motherland. Sir, the pollsters are predicting, for example, that South Americans, Latin Americans will vote Democrat. Not necessarily. They are in real time able to communicate with their families in South America, whether in Bolivia or Peru or Venezuela, and they are seeing the havoc that the Chinese virus has caused there. They are not going to vote for anyone like Joe Biden perceived to be soft on China. No, sir, not at all. Similarly, Indians, as Mr. Iyer put it across very well, he himself is probably a first or second generation immigrant. I don't know. I'm not an immigrant, but I have children. Both our kids are settled here. They too are now beginning to understand that the cause of the economic problem, the cause of the Black Lives Movement, which matter, etc., it's socio-economic. The Black Lives Movement is not the blacks, when Black Americans, if I may use the term African American to be politically, when they erupt in violence, it's not because suddenly they've discovered a dislike for the police. It's basically socio-economic marginalization that they are protesting against. And people are beginning to realize the economy, sir, which is very, very important for anybody who lives in America, is reviving. I mean, we go to a place like to buy a refrigerator, for example, order it on Amazon, and they'll tell you you have to wait 6 weeks because today demand is exceeding supply. Ditto for automobiles. This is America. Nobody waits for anything.
Well, it's true that, but it's also been true that every time we say, oh my God, look, Bobby Jindal, he couldn't give 2 hoots about India. I don't know what Kamala Harris said. They all try to prove themselves to be more American than thou because they have electoral battles to fight in America. They're not fighting for the Indian vote. And there's a realism in that also.
There is an expression that we use in India, and forgive me, sir, for saying this. वो कहते हैं कि नया मुल्ला ज़्यादा नमाज पढ़ता है. When the fellow is, he comes into the United States, he wants to prove his loyalty. After all, he takes a pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. We have no problems with that. But deep down, sir, and I think Mr. Iyer and Mr.
I'm trying to understand this,
whether remains this commitment to India.
Whether there is a difference between an Indian diaspora, and by Asian, I mean Indian. At this point in time, you can't club the Chinese and the Indians together for obvious reasons. But the Chinese diaspora operates a bit differently. From imagination. Preeti, there are going to be fundamental issues with any Republican, let alone a Republican who is been trying to build a wall like Donald Trump. And the reality is that the basic logic of immigration is what matters to Indian Americans. They have family and cousins and relatives that Donald Trump doesn't want coming to America. That's what they're voting for. China and India come far behind all of that.
Well, I think we are seeing a lot of cracks even in the H-1B system. So, immigration reform is really the call of the hour. I think that the Indian American diaspora is sometimes stuck between a rock and a hard place here because they are in very, very woke cities, if I can say that, and there's a lot of pressure for them to be politically correct, and they would be shunned sometimes by their own if they are too loud about their leaning. However, the silent majority is huge, not just in middle America, but also within the diaspora. Last night I was on a call and there were a lot of grassroots groups and these people were gung-ho. They had campaigned a lot and they're very happy with their efforts. So the support is there. Okay. They don't always say it. They don't always get polled. But the votes will speak for their.
Okay, it's going to be interesting because there is work. There are now a lot of Indians who, thanks to Sri Iyer and NewsX, at least know who Ro Khanna is and why we should worry about them. And I'm hoping they're calling up their family members. I'm certainly going to make the attempt to highlight who these people are, and we've done several broadcasts putting this out. But Sri Iyer, just on that note, before I get Kriti back into this conversation, on a very practical front, sir, despite best efforts and best logics, here we are, and in the bottom line of things, we have to now ask ourselves the question, What if Joe Biden wins? What happens?
Oh, nothing is going to change much. I think what will happen is Democrats have, promised a lot to this left liberal lobby. I don't think they can fulfill any of those things. Joe Biden is going to have his hands full. Maybe against Iran, maybe there may be a little bit of loosening. But other than that, I think more or less the policies will continue on. One small shout out, there is a candidate, Nisha Sharma, California District 17, I believe. She's contesting for the Congress and she's been getting death threats. I want you all to please call out this nonsense that a Pakistani American has said, and she said nothing offensive. She was just innocently comparing something with something else, and this is very, very regrettable. She's running on a Republican ticket. I hope that people who are in her district come out in numbers and support her cause.
Okay,
she has done some excellent stuff.
I'll come back. Why don't we profile some of the work which she's done? I can see no reason why we can't do that here, because a lot of our YouTube videos are watched in America. Okay, I have to ask a larger question for which I want to rope in Kriti. Kriti, as we speak, a few days before, we know what's happening in France, right? Now, we have been talking and having conversations here on Mahathir Mohamad and Erdogan and Imran Khan, when exactly 1 year ago, all three of them together went to the UN and they were accusing India of Islamophobia, of being a racist, bigoted country, Hindu Rashtra, this, that. And now the same people are accusing France. So, in the context of what is happening, are people realizing that the Indians were telling you so when these people were calling names against India? You don't have a problem. But now then they are targeting France, viciously targeting, killing in France. The world is waking up.
Well, Rishabh, unfortunately, the world that we live in is so polarized that we all live in our own silos and don't necessarily change our opinions when some facts are brought into place. And it's true, be it for the right or for the left. But I do think that, the threat of radical Islam has been recognized. It's recognized even by the United States. In fact, that's one of the things that the United States has been rather aggrieved that India does not do enough. Be it fighting ISIS.
No, the question I'm trying to ask, all the people who, and who where they work, in the New York Times, the Washington Post, I can easily throw in BBC, and I'm sure BBC America does the same thing, who were very happy to be roasting the heck out of India over every opportunity that they got, right? And when the Imran Khans of the world were getting full, front page coverage when they came to the UN, roasting India as an Islamophobic country. Now that France is being roasted, have their opinions changed? Or is France an Islamophobic country?
Well, I won't comment on any media house in particular, but I do think that radical Islam is a growing threat, and people do recognize it. But having said that, I do think that most of the narrative that's been going around in the world, and especially when if a Biden administration comes in, it would be an issue as well. Looks at some of the issues that are of internal nature to India, and India being a sovereign country, I think shouldn't be bothered much by what others say. Okay. That is again just my opinion, without having to say anything else too controversial.
Well, no, fair enough. You can't say controversial things. I can, so I'm getting away with it. Ambassador Deepak Vora wants to make an interjection, and I want to have a couple of questions before we wind up. I'm running short of time. Ambassador Vora, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, sir, that America's view of Islam changed after 9/11. They just don't like Muslims, period, sir. Whether it's politically correct or incorrect, Donald Trump went around saying that I'm going to ban immigration from these Islamic countries. Like him, hate him, this is what he said. This is what I believe, at least in New York, the average American feels. I've been stopped at the airport by immigration and asked, are you a Muslim? And when I said no, they said, we'll go right through. There's no reason for us to stop you. Secondly, sir, you said
that's the very definition of bigotry.
The 50,000 people who showed up for Howdy Modi, they were not from Houston alone. They came from the entire country. They wanted to express their support for the Prime Minister and for whatever he's doing. And thirdly, the three characters you mentioned, one is senile, the second is delusional, the third is an imbecile, sir. When they get together, it's a school for fools, and it doesn't really matter very much, sir. I'm sorry, I'm not being politically
correct. Let me guess this. So senile is Mahathir Mohamad, imbecile has to be Imran Khan, and delusional has to be Erdogan. Okay, fair enough.
You said it, sir.
Okay, but this is the issue that I'm trying to raise here, and Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor help us understand this, that the larger issue, and these are the debates I've been having internally here in India, right? When we were saying that the Chinese now want to distract the world with a Christian versus Muslim fight in Europe. And they are happy to get Mahathir Mohamad and Erdogan to do it for them. Nobody was listening.
Yes.
Now it's happening, okay? Still nobody is listening. Does this not become obvious that till the point that this happens in your home soil, again we have to wait for 3 or 4 planes to smash into you for you to realize that terrorism is a thing? Why is there such miasma in American politics?
So Rishabh, just to put it in context, the Kandahar hijacking of the Indian Airlines plane, we were supposed to be on that plane. I was in the embassy in Kathmandu. The flight was to take off on 24th December. We missed that flight because we came away a day earlier to Lucknow. But there were 14 people from the Indian embassy. When we asked the Americans and the Europeans and the Israelis and the others for help to get that, all the passengers freed, all of them refused. And as Deputy Secretary Americas in the Ministry of External Affairs, we were faced with the barrage of human rights issues by the senators, by the congressmen from UK.
And most of them will be Democrat. I'm not saying the Republicans don't do it, but 90% will be Democrat.
Democrats, you're right. But what happened was that after 9/11, suddenly the discourse changed. What India was being accused of in terms of human rights violations against terrorists became like a very pale in comparison to what the Western world started doing for the terrorism. So similarly, like Deepak Bora, Ambassador Bora
So
mentioned,
this is my question, that now you can be warning, we can shout ourselves on the rooftops that this is what Erdogan and Malaysia are doing, but nobody seems to notice this in America until it heads home, and that's okay. That's not abnormal for local politics.
NewsX for putting it out there on so many issues which have taken sort of been recognized.
Okay, I'm way over time. So I just want to quickly take a last word in. Preeti, what is different this time around? Obviously I have to look at it from an Indian position, and Americans have to look at it from an American position, and there is a lot of correlation right now, but that correlation will never be 100%. What is different this time? What is palpably changing? What did the 50,000 people who showed up in Houston actually tell us? Preeti.
This is for me, right?
Yeah, Preeti.
Yeah, I think there is a growing sense of nationalism, even within the Indian Americans here, that are realizing that how important a U.S. administration that is friendly to their home country is. I think it's not just their parents, but it's across the board. I'm seeing even young people being very proud of their culture, their heritage, and also they're understanding the geopolitical ramifications. I do see this, and I'm so happy to have these conversations with young people, especially that understand that what goes on, in India, and what foreign policy, how important it is, and also the hypocrisy that we sometimes see from the left, where they double down. Or they create, a big hoo-ha.
They create a phobia of India, and yet they have no opinion on Pakistan, and that's deeply disturbing.
Right.
Sriya, here I'm out of time. So quick last word. Of course, we'll be talking more often. Yes.
What would be ideal is a Democratic majority in Congress and Senate and a Republican president. That way there will be good checks and balances. Whatever will come out of it would have been a good reasoned decisions. I hope that's what's going to happen. I'm not 100% sure, but the way the Senate races are going, I think that's the outcome that we are headed for.
Well, now here's the bottom line. There is a momentum now and a logic in India, and therefore in India-US ties, that can move around a little bit, but you can't break, as Martin Luther King would say, the arc of history. So that's what the arc of history is telling us. So now the question we have to ask ourselves is, what's different this time around? Because it is perfectly reasonable for the Americans who are voting for an American president, not for a global president, not for an Indian president. They are voting for who they think is best to lead America. It will only matter to them what India thinks if India matters in the world. So the question then is, does India matter in the world? So we all have family and relatives living in America. A lot of you watching this broadcast will. They are not seeing it from an Indian point of view. They are seeing it from an American Indian point of view. And we have to respect that as well. In the end, the next week will come and go. The world has to move on. The threat from China won't go away, and we have to find a new way of fighting it. I take a break. Thank you, all of you from various parts of America, for joining us. Your time was very much appreciated. Hope to see you over the next few days as well. See you in a minute.